Okay, welcome back to the second video in the series of 3 on Plague Inc. This is actually how to play a round of Plague Inc. or 2, depending on how time goes, as a single player game. Essentially, it's all laid out on the cards for you, so you've got a turn summary for the player and you've got a turn summary for the Plague bot, which is different. You take those actions, the other entity then takes their actions, be that the Plague bot or the player, and then it comes back. So the player always goes first in single player mode, and the first thing to consider is how many DNA points am I going to get. So score 1 DNA point for every country you control. At the moment I only control Argentina. Control's defined really easily: who has the most plague points in that country. At the minute I've only got Argentina. I then, because I've got this bonus DNA slot open on my player card, I haven't covered it with a mutation for my disease yet, I get +1, so I actually get 2, so I now have 2 DNA points. The next thing I do then is I look at the available country cards and I pick one, which then goes immediately on the board, but I do not infect, so it's quite important your decisions at this point. Really what you want to do is pick countries that you can get to, and preferably that the disease can't. Now for me that means that I'd have to be in South America without a port or an airport. That's not entirely available at the moment, but then again they haven't evolved the ability to go by air or sea at the moment, so there we go. I don't have the ability to travel by sea either, so I'd really like South America, simply because then I can travel to it. However, that's not available as one of the face-up options. Therefore I'm going to take the face-down card. That's quite a dangerous tactic because that's also where the Plague bot was from, working my way through that deck. However, as you replace cards, it would be about the same timings. France in Europe, which has an airport. That's disappointing for me. I have no way of getting there unless I go through another country first, with both a seaport and an airport at the moment. The only one of those is the USA. Unfortunately, I can't do a huge amount. The other thing you can do with country cards once you've drawn them is you can choose to discard all the trade cards in your hand and draw from the deck, which is quite powerful if the ones you've got are of no use to you. However, I've been quite lucky. There are a few cards which I can choose to do. So I have air transmission, which enables my airborne ability, i.e. the ability to travel by plane. I have hallucinations, that increases my infectability, which we'll talk about in a moment. I have water transmission. This one is the one I really wanted. It's worth 2 points, so I'll lose 2 points off the score track, but evolve it. That means I can actually travel by ship. So at this point I'm going to gain water transmission. I've now evolved that, so I lose the 2 points. You can only evolve 1 trait card down at a time. Well, you can only place 1 at a time, or per turn. I've now evolved that, so we move on to the next stage, which is infection. So you count your yellow infectivity bars that are available, and you place that many disease tokens out. So I've decided I'm going to put 1 over in the USA, 1 over in South Korea. While that doesn't give me control, and the Plague bot will probably infect some of those depending on what traits they evolve, what that does, if they don't manage to do that, is it gives me shared control, so I'll score points from them, DNA points from them at the start of the next turn. It also, if I get the airborne evolution next turn, which I have available to me with one of my cards I already have, I will then be able to fly from the USA to France or to South Africa. And depending on what Plague bot evolves, we will see what happens. The final step in a turn is the death step. That's not going to happen this turn, simply because none of the countries are full of disease cubes. Okay, so we'll skip that step this turn. So the next thing that happens then really is the Plague bot. So the Plague bot draws a country card, and they draw it from the top of the country pile. They immediately place that onto the world board, and it's gone into Saudi Arabia. It's a hot country, shown by the stars on the cities, the suns. That means there's a special ability needed to infect that area. There is also cold countries, which are shown by a blue frost icon. Okay. The next thing then is we draw blind off the top of the trait deck, and it goes into the first slot. So in fact, talking about cold, the first card that the Plague Bot has evolved is Cold Resistance. Okay, so that happens straight away. That goes into that slot, sorry. We then resolve the traits that Plague Bot has got. We start on the left and work our way to the right. As there's only one card out at the moment, that's going to be quite simple. It has the Cold Resistance ability. What that tells me is I need to place one token in every cold connected country. There are no cold countries out. Nothing happens for Plague Bot. That's the end of Plague Bot's turn. However, if you're ever in a position whereby Plague Bot can't do anything, or doesn't do anything, i.e. is called being stuck, then it draws and places another country card. So that's gone into South America. But it places a token. Okay, and that's irrespective for that token of cold and heat resistance. We then try and process the actions again. Cold resistance can't do anything. Oh dear, that's not particularly useful. So it now must replace all existing trait cards. That one gets discarded, and a new one comes out. And then the turn immediately ends. Okay, so that's the end of Plague Bot's turn. It's now my turn again. So I score some DNA, so I've got 1, 2, 3, plus my bonus, so I actually scored 4 this turn. That's very helpful. I choose a country card. And I think I'm going to go for Indonesia, in Oceania. Okay, I then decide what evolutions I want. So while airborne would be very useful to me, allowing me to use the air bridge from the USA out to other continents, actually the only continents it will allow me access to are Africa and France. Not too worried about France at the moment because Plague Bot can't get there either, because it doesn't have the right evolutions. I'm not too worried about Africa. Okay, Plague Bot may draw a card that allows it to move on in Africa, but actually it's got a 5-space thing. I've got the opportunity potentially to get in there quite quickly, especially knowing I've got that in my hand already. So what other cards do I have that I could play? Well, I've only got 4 points, so that means the only one in my card I have which I could play is Hallucinations. That increases how infectious my disease is. So that's quite helpful. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to move on to the infection card once I've taken my points off. Move on to the infection step. My infectivity is 3. That means I get to place 3 of my tokens down onto the table to any of my connected countries. Now, what I'm going to do is a slightly unusual move, just to demonstrate how this works. I'm going to take Venezuela and place all 3 tokens onto Venezuela. What that then means is Venezuela is now full. It's fully infected and I'm in control of it. So we now move on to the death step. What you do is you get the death dice. It's a funky dice that comes with the game. Blood splattered, it's quite cool. And you roll it. And what you're trying to do is equal or less than your lethality score. My lethality is currently a base of 1 because I've not evolved any more lethal features. So I'm going to roll and see if I get a 1. I don't, I get a 6, so that country just sits there. End of my turn. We now move on to Plague Bot's turn again. So Plague Bot draws a random country. So that should have been replaced when I used it. Draws a random country. It picks Egypt up, which is in Africa but is hot. Okay, so again you'll need that heat resistance in order to infect it. Okay, that's fine. Trait cards then move along 1. And if we'd filled this, that end card would be discarded. And we draw another card. Okay, we then conduct the traits. This is where left to right becomes important. Less so on this because they've both got the same thing, so we just take the same action twice over, but generally quite important. So, first thing we do is look at the left hand one. Lethality. So what you have to do with lethality is you place a token in every climate suitable connected country the Plague Bot does not already infect. can do that because that one, Argentina, is climate suitable and connected. Turpin goes on. Okay, so we've now done an action. The plague bot is not stuck. Then kill one fully infected plague bot controlled country. There aren't any. Therefore, that part of the action doesn't happen. The plague bot has done something, and therefore we're all good. Okay. What happens if there's a tie is very simple. The biggest country gets killed. The biggest country is first decided by number of cities. So the biggest country on the board, the biggest countries on the board at the moment are the USA and Indonesia. That's a tie. If there's a further tie, i.e. this number of countries is the same, up in the top is some very small text, and that actually gives you the population of those countries. And that's the second decision. Okay, that's the secondary tiebreaker. No two populations are the same. The biggest population of the two tied cards is the one that's killed off. Okay, it would then go into my third turn, but I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for watching so far.